Hi there, welcome to the Middle-earth Play-by-Mail fan channel. Great to have you with us. What I'm wanting to do today is just do a strategic analysis of one of the regions of Middle-earth and using the 1650 version of the game in which to do that. Now, obviously, there are lots of different regions within Middle-earth. They all have their own different geography, their own different layout of population centres and roads and so forth, and they all have their own particular foibles. So I'm hoping to create a series looking at each one, looking at the Gondors, looking at the sort of Arthedain Angmar region, looking at Harandor, Ravanion and so forth. But the reason I thought I'd start off with Mordor is in many ways it's probably the most important and critical region in Middle-earth. The reason being that the Dark Servants have no less than 6 out of their 10 capitals in this region. And it's a very concentrated area of power for the Dark Servants. And as you can see from the map, it is a bit of a fortress. As you can see along the top here, you've got mountains down this side, mountains at the bottom, and I'll talk a little bit more about those and how movement affects it. So this is very much a fortress for the Dark Servants. But first of all, let's just go through and have a look at some of the population centres. Oh, if you're new to Middle-earth Play-by-Mail or returning after a long layoff, the piece of software I'm using to show what's going on here is Jovasir. It is highly recommended as a way of analysing what's going on in your games. You can download yours and your teammates' XML files into it, and it will bring up the whole of the game. It also allows you to put in orders for your characters and to submit them easily online. It has various tools for analysis, so highly recommend that you use this in supporting your gaming with Middle-earth Play-by-Mail if you're not doing so already. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the areas and some of the pop centres and the ways in. Now obviously, right next to Mordor, over here we have the region of Gondor, with North Gondor right on the front doorstep with some pretty large recruitment centres and some pretty big starting armies. Just behind them, of course, we have South Gondor, and we have access up the River Anduin to the Ithilien area. Then to the north as well, we have the Mirkwood and Rovanian regions, and you've got in red here the Airthraim with a lot of big starting armies, a lot of big cavalry armies that can move quickly along the roads. So pretty much from the start, the Dark Servants are having to defend. Now there are 3 main ways in on this side from Mordor. I'm going to talk about the rear of Mordor and attacking from the south in a minute, but let's talk about this area here. Now, because of the rule that you can only move from one mountain hex to another if you're going along a road, you can see that from here, 3821, all the way along the top of the Mountains of Ash, then down the Efel Duath, the Mountains of Shadow, all the way down here, right round to around 3330 is impassable except for 3 critical entries into the northwest of Mordor, and those 3 being the Ithil Pass going through into Barad Ungol, which is the capital of the Fire King, and at the end of that there is a major town with a castle, so that's pretty tough to get past. And then the other main route in, we have the Morannon, the Black Gate itself, which is the capital of the Dog Lord, and that's a major town with a keep, so that's even tougher to get past. And it's also possible to get up from either 3121 or 3022, climb up the mountain to Durthang, which is a major town again with a castle, so heavily fortified, and that is the capital of the Ice King. So we have 3 Dark Servant capitals right on the front line. Now of all of these, Durthang is perhaps the one where it's obvious when an attack is coming, because you have to be adjacent to it in order to use the 12 movement points to get up to 3122 onto Durthang itself. That said, however, it's usually quite obvious if something's going to be coming down the Ithil Pass, and the Morannon is also an area which is to be kept quite well guarded. Should either the Morannon or Durthang be taken, there is this full backstop of Carrick Angren, which, while it's only a camp, does have a fort on top of it. So again, any armies that have taken the Morannon moving through will, unless they're moving evasively, be stopped at Carrick Angren. So there is quite a lot needing to be defended if you're the Dark Servants, or figured out how you can get through and either capture or move beyond if you're the Free Peoples. Note that it is possible to move evasively past the fortifications sometimes. So if you had, say, an army at 3124, let's say it's a cavalry army and it's fed, you see here it would take 7 movement points to get to Barad-dûr, which is the 4th capital I have to mention, and that is the capital of the Dark Lieutenants. And while it's a major town, and while in the books Barad-dûr has a gigantic fortress on top of it, it actually has no fortifications. So if you can get past the very difficult routes into Mordor and onto Barad-dûr, you can knock that about quite easily. So if you did have cavalry which were fully fed, you could move evasively and end up on Barad-dûr itself. Just clear those numbers. Now, often there can be a debate amongst Free Peoples that if you are to take one of these routes in, what you then do with it. I've generally found that if you can take it, and if you have a backup commander in one of the armies that takes it, and which then holds it, to remove fortifications is the best long-term plan. While it means that your newly captured, let's say you capture the Morannon, your newly captured town, as it would then be, because when you capture a pop centre it reduces by 1 level. Instead of having a town with a keep, which would be relatively hard for the opposition to take back, if you can rip out all of the fortifications so that it's just a town, if it is recaptured, well, it doesn't matter, because all of your big recruitment centres up around the north, and support from out in the west and so forth, no longer have to worry about there being a keep on the mountains on the region of the Morannon. And for the Dark Servants to replace a keep, and the sheer amount of timber that would place, is usually not feasible. So in the long-term interests of the game, I would normally advise, if you capture one of the 3 blocking major towns, Morannon, Durthang or Barad Ungol, if at all you can, to remove the fortifications, which will allow easier access for other armies streaming in. Now, should you be able to get past one of these blocks and be able to get an army in there, you can cause quite a bit of problems, because once you get beyond the mountains you end up in deserts which are relatively open, and there's quite a soft unfortified area around here. If you can get up the mountain to Barad-dûr and destroy that, it will cause the Fire King huge problems, because it will take out half his tax base in one go. You then have, towards the south, regions belonging to the Cloud Lord in this sort of dark brown colour, and in this dark blue colour you have the Blind Sorcerer. So if you can get an army through here and can get a couple of attacks off here, it is usually quite easy to destroy these. And with the fragility of the Dark Servants' economies, destroying just a couple of towns or a major town does take quite a chunk out of their economic base. Just to mention the other 2 capitals before looking at 1 or 2 other strategies. We have the Cloud Lord capital down here, Calnargil. This is much harder to get to, partly because you're either having to come in from the north, which means you're having to come in through here, down the Morannon, or through the Ithil Pass. By the time you get down to here, the Cloud Lord's assassins will have got to you and probably killed your commander. Or you've got to come in through the back door of Mordor, of which more in a moment, or occasionally you can come in round the south. However, note that in the Harrendoor region, to the south of Mordor, you're looking at pretty much everything being this light brown colour of hills stroke rough, which if you've got an infantry army, even if you're force marching and they're fully fed, you can only move 2 hexes per turn, and you will need to be right next to Calnargil at 3631 or 3731 in order to move up to take it. So there is a good chance that you will be seen coming in, particularly when you notice that, let's have a look, what fog of war have I got on for here at the moment. You will probably be seen by the this is the fog of war for the Dark Servants. So the Dark Servants in their maps will be able to see all to the south below their region here, and will probably spot any armies coming in and be able to take some evasive measures. So Calnargil is very difficult to take. Again, it's got a castle. Also difficult to take is Lurglurak, never known how to pronounce that, which is the blind sorcerer capital. Again, it's got a castle on it. Because of the layout of the mountains, you can either come in from the south over the mountains here, which is a bit of a long slog coming through the hills and rough, or you've got to come through the back door of Mordor, work your way round along here and take them here. So it's a very difficult pop centre to take down directly with armies. Now, I mentioned the back door of Mordor. Of course, the one area in which Mordor is wide open is through armies coming in through the plains, through the back, to attack the soft, squishy insides. Best place to do this will be Eothraim, or the Northmen, and in defending against, or of course the Easterlings, if they decide to join the Free People. And in order to defend against them, usually 3825 is a critical hex. That is a pinch point. So Dark Servants, if you can, early on in the game, place a camp on 3825 and at some point put a tower on that. That will at least slow down anyone trying to crash in through the back door. It's not as quick and easy to get through as it seems. Obviously, there are a couple of these small minor rivers that are draining into the inland Sea of Nirn at the back, so they add 2 movement points on any movement trying to get across. So let's imagine that you've got yourself a camp hidden off hex where they can't be seen back here. Let's say you get some cavalry there and they're all fed. So we'll show the fed cavalry armies movements from 4424. Place that. They can only get as far as round here. So they've still got some movement to do. So they will appear on the Dark Servants' radar before they get directly onto a soft, squishy population centre. Do note, however, you can get an army to 3922 suddenly appearing, and then you'll be able to get up the next turn to 3822, and even if, which is a Dragon Lord backup pop centre, and even if the Dragon Lord are able to move in agents to take out the commanders of the armies, you will be able to get in an attack to destroy or capture 3822 before anything else happens. So with some planning, it is possible to send a couple of armies through to the back door of Mordor. Obviously, a trick of having a large army with several backup commanders, reaching a certain point where you split the army and they start to move in different directions so that the Dark Servants can't cover all the bases, is a critical one. And Dark Servants highly recommend getting a fortification at 3825 just to act as a speed bump to anything coming through. Just a quick mention before moving on, we do have these 3 camps of the Long Rider at the back. They're kind of important for Long Rider because their production, as you can see within this game, does give them a good lot of food, some mounts and some leather, so it is one way of supporting the Dark Servants and the Long Rider in particular's recruitment of cavalry armies to do lightning raids out, getting into Ravanion and having a bit of a run round there. Obviously trying to break out of Mordor, just as the Free Peoples will have a problem breaking in through all the pinch points of the Moran and Durthang, and particularly the Ithil Pass, so it is the Dark Servants can have a problem breaking out. Not so difficult from the Morannon, because obviously you can move out through 3220, because you start out with Thuring Wathost under the Dark Lieutenants. Early on, the Morannon region is open, so you can get troops out into Ravanian area up towards Mirkwood, and sometimes one of the best ways of making sure you're not just fighting free peoples forever throwing themselves at 3221 the Marana is to get troops up around the Aerplex, up into open country, and then you're forcing the free peoples to go into a defensive mode to try and close you down, which buys you time for recruitment and development back here in northwest Mordor and throwing out more armies. Final note as well, often it is good in economic development to make good use of the mountain hexes if you're a Dark Servant. That's because the Dark Servants do have a fairly poor starting economy, but placing camps up in the mountains will give you gold, and it will also give you fairly high value goods such as steel, mithril and bronze, which you can sell on the markets to help keep yourself afloat, or sometimes use to equip your troops just to make them that bit stronger. The camps being placed on the inner side of where you've got a double thickness of mountains obviously makes them easily protected, but even putting camps on the outside is a bit of a nuisance, because for Gondor or whoever to actually go around and move up and take these camps out is a bit of a hassle. Camps that start on the north side near to the Ravanian area are often a little bit more exposed. I have seen quite frequently Aerthraim doing lightning raids with horses and suddenly landing and burning camps, and before you know it you can have quite a bit of your production base, particularly of gold, removed. The town of Carverad for the Dark Lieutenants is an interesting one. It's often can be targeted earlier on, but I have seen very good use made of Carverad. Obviously Dark Lieutenants start with some pretty good emissaries. They do have Urzahil, and if he can get the voice of the Dark Tower, I can't remember if he starts with it, but you can have an emissary quite quickly moving to 3621, get it up to a major town if you can get some fortifications on it, hire an army. It does require quite a commitment of resources, so it has to be a central plank of the Dark Lieutenant strategy. But you can develop 3621 as a recruitment centre, which has then gives you direct access out to sending armies out to cause threats to a lot of these isolated areas, such as Aerthraim camps, some of the Northmen areas as well. So that is an extra option of how Mordor can create a recruitment base so it can get its troops out and cause problems. Overall, Mordor is a really fascinating region. It is fairly central in most gameplay because it is such a concentration of Dark Servants population centres, and if the Free Peoples can cause a break in and remove some of the fortifications on the way in to allow successive waves to be able to have easy access into Mordor and can cause damage there, it's pretty hard for the Dark Servants to make a comeback from there. Similarly, if the Dark Servants can make a good fist of continuing to defend around the northwest of Mordor, putting a bit of a defence on the back door, giving themselves time to really ramp up their character-based strength in agents and in offensive emissaries and getting curse squads going, normally they can then start grinding down the character base of the Free Peoples, and if the Dark Servants can also make a few breakouts so that they can do things such as burning some areas in the Aerplex, coming out and threatening perhaps some revealed areas in Mirkwood, then that can be a way in which the Dark Servants really take the pressure off and turn the tables on the Free Peoples and the early economic and military advantages that the Free Peoples have. So that, I hope, has given you a good idea of the layout of Mordor and some of the challenges that it places for both sides. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. If there are any other regions you'd like me to take a look at, again, let me know there. But for now, thanks for taking a look. I hope it's been interesting, and see you next time.